The Shepnaz podcast begins now.
You're listening to the Shepnaz podcast, a podcast at Shepherd Church. Everything we do here is to help people take their next step toward Jesus, and this podcast is part of that. We want to help you engage daily in your faith. Today, we've got Rob and Brianna here, and we're going to be talking about social media, and we wanted Brianna here so that we didn't sound like we were 85 years old. So Brianna's here to help bring us the younger perspective of social media, because Rob has no idea what he's talking about. I'm just kidding. That's not true.
No, I know about watermelons.
Yeah. he's learning, guys. So Rob is always learning. So Rob, why don't you set this up? Because you kind of brought this up that you wanted to talk about this on the podcast.
Yeah.
And just so we're clear, like all of us use social media.
Yeah.
I don't think because of this conversation, any of us are going to stop using social media.
Yeah, that's not the goal.
So that's just so we're like off the top. Like, don't think that that's what this conversation is. We're not going to come in here and try to convince you to stop using social media, but we want to talk about it. And so go ahead, because you wanted to kind of set it up.
And so in the message on Sunday, we're talking about Mary and the mother of Jesus, and we're talking about one of the qualities that she has, that she was a godly woman, and that the Bible said she was a virgin. She hadn't been with a man, which qualified her to be Jesus' mother. Had she been with a man and been inappropriate, she wouldn't have been in a place to be used by God. And I think part of that is because there was a great deal of expectations in that culture for purity to be valued. The Jewish people, got their values from Scripture, and then the Scriptures really informed their culture. And so it was a cultural expectation for girls and boys as well to maintain a level of sexual purity until they were married. And in the message, I was talking about how the culture that our kids are growing up in today, they're not growing up in that culture. The culture today defies and challenges the scriptural expectations for purity. It says that if you are not, active, if you're not participating, there's something wrong with you. And there's so many pressures pushing in on our kids and influencing our kids, and social media is part of that. It's not the only thing. Certainly there's, the internet and pop culture and music industry and Hollywood and peers and all that kind of stuff. But our kids are influenced by social media and the message of social media. One of the things I talked about was that we live in an attention economy. And the idea behind that is that, attention is the main prize on the internet. If you can get someone's attention, you win. Mm-hmm. Because what you've done is you've taken their mind from what it was on to what you want it to be on. Mm-hmm. And social media does that. That's really what social media does. It takes our attention from things and puts it on what the person who's posting wants it to be about. That can be a good thing. It could be a good thing. It could put our mind on God and Scripture and good things or whatever. That's not always the case. Oftentimes, social media puts our attention on things that aren't healthy for us. And then we end up creating, comparisons and, those kinds of things, and it becomes a dangerous thing. And so I just thought it would be good for us to talk a little bit about social media. And again, like you said earlier, Joey, it's not a bad thing, and we're not trying to get anybody to get off of it. But there are some dangers I think parents should be aware of, conversations they should have. And before we started the podcast, I think this would be kind of funny to do. Okay. What was the first social media platform that you used, and when was it? And I'll go first because I'm the old one here. But I remember I was a youth pastor in Grove City, and one of my volunteers came to me and said something about Facebook. I said, "What the heck is Facebook?" And she goes, "Oh, it's just this thing that's mostly college kids, so you can kind of keep in touch with your friends." I'm like, "Well, I'm never going to need something like that. That's stupid. That's dumb anyway. I mean,
that won't catch on.
Just call your friends. Yeah,
don't invest in that.
What do you need that for? And then it just became like this thing. And I totally remember this day when I saw the first smartphone. There was the flip phones. Well, it wasn't even a flip phone. It was a phone that had a digital thing, and all you could do is make phone calls on it. You couldn't even text on it. And then when I saw the first smartphone and I thought that thing could connect to the internet, I thought that is going to be an amazing tool for the enemy to use to destroy people's lives. I just remember thinking that. Now, I don't want to be like a pessimist, because I use my smartphone all the time. my smartphone's smarter than me, but it's a tool that we can use. But it is something that I think we have to make sure that we are using with parameters and guidelines and all that kind of stuff. So that Facebook, I don't know if I think it was around for several years before I even decided to get one. So what about you? What was your first?
So the first, really, they came out, they were almost simultaneous when I was in high school. Zanga was a thing, and then MySpace.
Oh, MySpace.
Because when I was in high school, I was actually not able to have Facebook yet because it was only for college kids. You actually had to have a college email address to sign up for it.
Yeah.
So like my sister was on it because she was in college, but I couldn't get on it until then. I think it was actually in 2007 when they opened it up to high school, to anybody could have a Facebook. It was no longer a college kid thing. Yeah. And I graduated in 2007. So Zanga was sort of a blog slash messaging system. And then MySpace, if anybody remembers, was, you had your top 8 friends, which is hilarious to think about now, that you would actually rank your friends and people would get up in arms about why am I not higher up in your top 8.
Yeah, that was great.
It started great conversations. But
this is before you were born, so don't worry.
Close. So, but that was high school. So we didn't have anything in middle school. None of it was. Facebook was around technically, but it was really only on a few campuses at that point in time. I just see you going.
I came unplugged.
Christmas vacation.
I couldn't hear anything anymore.
So that's that. Yeah, that was me. And then I had Facebook once I got higher up, and and when I look back at my early Facebook days, when I have Facebook memories, I think, you would have been. They shouldn't have let me.
You would have been in the youth group then at Grove City when I was youth pastor, and we never used social media. Like it was like I would never even talked about it. I'm sure.
No, I don't think so.
I was a terrible youth pastor, but it wasn't a big deal then. No. What about you, Brianna?
So I said Facebook, but then I remembered Webkins came out.
What is Webkins?
You don't know what Webkins is?
It was a toy.
No.
It was, I'm surprised. So they're like stuffed.
So out of touch,
Remember
Joey.
how old I am.
But I feel like you would have heard about these. So they're like stuffed animals that come with a code, and you would like log them into like a virtual world, kind of like Club Penguin. Do you know Club Penguin? Oh, wow.
He's shaking his head no.
Well, and
for those of you who are just listening.
But I was just like thinking about it. It was basically social media, because you would connect with your friends and you would chat, and like basically you're like raising this animal.
Oh, well, this actually brings up a better, because technically then instant messaging before all this was a form of social media. So like AOL Instant Messenger, I mean, we were on that when I was in 6th grade, and taking up way too much of our time, kicking my parents off the internet, because back then you couldn't be on the internet and have a phone working. But so it's another thing was because though they didn't necessarily work exactly like Facebook does now, which I mean, even in Facebook didn't work like it does now then. Yeah. But instant messaging was also a form of social media that we had.
Yeah.
And Webkins, huh?
No, and I'm remembering, like, which is so bad. Like, so Webkins I got when I was like 8 or 9. And I think around the same time, there was this thing called BarbieGirl.com, and it was similar.
I had that.
But
Rob's all about it.
Looking back, I remember, so it was like a chat thing. So you could like add your friends, and you basically have like a Barbie, and it's online, and like, but you could talk with anybody in the world. And I remember being like, I was really young, but there were like people that would go on and they would try to like, it was censored to the point that like it wasn't really bad, but there would be people that would like try to chat with me that were definitely like pedophiles. Like,
but I remember that there was a lot of talk and a lot of, news segments about group chat rooms back then.
Yeah.
Like that was the pinnacle of like, don't let your kid on the internet, because this is what they could get into without knowing what they're getting into. And now it's if you are a parent and you think your kid isn't on social media,
just need to check.
Yeah. My guess is that they're probably in it somehow.
Shepherd Church invites you to celebrate the hope of Jesus through a family-friendly candlelight worship service featuring music and an encouraging message. Christmas is on a Monday this year, which makes our schedule a little different than past years. We will only have one evening service on Saturday, the 23rd at 6 p.m. and two morning services on Christmas Eve Sunday at 9 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. All are welcome to celebrate Christmas with us.
Back then, I don't think that was in the forefront of anyone's minds,
No.
especially my parents. They're like, oh, it's a Barbie game. But like,
Yeah.
anybody could have gotten on. And thankfully, like, nothing bad came out of it. I was at the level where I'm like, oh, this is bad. Like, let me get out of this chat room or whatever. But like, you know, there weren't those censors as much, like, because no one was thinking about it. But now I think like there's so much exposure that like you have to be on it and be aware of.
Yeah.
And even just, there's a lot of things disguised as being good for kids that people use for other reasons. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's just, you have to be really careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're a teenager listening to this right now, you're like, these people are so old. What are they talking about? So let's bring it to more modern, stuff about like what social media is today and how it affects people today. Because just about everybody listening to this, there's a pretty good chance that you're listening because you found, like, you went to the YouTube link to listen to it, which is social media. Like, it permeates everything that we do on a daily basis now.
Yep.
So it's good to know about. So let's kind of get into kind of some of the things that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I would say I wanted to just get this conversation going for parents and other people. But I think, you know, when you look at social media, our kids are on it. There's probably some good aspects to it, you know, communicating and those kind of things. But what are, you know, as someone who's working with kids on a regular basis, probably Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Yeah, it's really not Facebook
TikTok.
anymore.
TikTok, Snapchat is a big one. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we didn't even talk about Snapchat. So what are some good things that you see from it? But then what are some dangers that maybe if there's a parent listening, this, like, you should just keep this in your mind and know this is a possibility and maybe someday have a conversation about it or know that this can be happening.
Yeah, so I think good things are like, I want to say communication, but then I think in some ways it's like can be the reverse effect that people aren't really communicating as much face to face because of, you know, but I mean, from a practical standpoint, like
you can promote events and stuff
for church, like promotion things. I think it's a good tool to like share your faith. And I know a lot of people do that. I try to do that on social media, but I think it's a practical thing to have. Like we're able to stay up to date on important things that, you know, news thing. I mean, there's a lot of good things that come from it. I think bad things, if I'm being honest, and we're not here to say that you shouldn't use social media because I'm a fan of social media. I use it. But I think as time goes on, if you look at it, I personally think the bad ways outweighs the good. Like over time, I think it's just getting worse. And like on I think pretty much every social media site, there's this thing called like an algorithm where if you, like let's say you come across a video that probably isn't the best thing to be watching. It could be really anything. That if you spend a certain amount of time watching it, if you watch it all the way through, then it'll bring it up again. It'll like suggest something like similar. And then you end up watching another video until the point like it just keeps popping up. And it not necessarily like something terrible, but it could be like, I don't know, like somebody like cursing or using profanity. And then it's like you have your kid watching like reel or after reel, like these short video clips over, just not good things. Like, and it's just constantly, or it'll recommend a person or a channel. And it's like,
that's one thing I think I've noticed before. If I've been on there and I watch a video, then all of a sudden there are other videos similar to that.
Yeah.
You have a lot of woodworking videos coming up.
Yeah. But the problem is if you watch a video that's probably not good for you, that maybe is, mature themed or whatever, more videos keep popping up.
Yeah.
And the algorithm doesn't know that you're 13 or 14 or whatever. And regardless of what age, you shouldn't be watching some of that stuff anyway, but it does. And it goes back to that economy of attention, that it just wants your attention. And the more that we give it our attention and it feeds us negative stuff, it affects us. So talk to us about, do you think that there's, a lot of images that get posted on Instagram and Facebook are edited. They're not like, you see people's best life most of the time. There are some people who put out the bad stuff, like, oh, this is a crappy day or whatever. But most of the time when people post things, it's like, I want you to see how great my life is. And then people look at that and they're looking at somebody's edited life and comparing it to their life, and it doesn't always measure up. Do you feel like that happens? Is that?
Yeah. I think 100%, and I've been guilty of that too. Like, I'm not going to go post, and it's understandable. Like, I don't think people want to go and post like their worst day of their life and share, which is,
like, I never post because I'm always having a bad hair day.
So or a bad beard day. But
she said beard, not beer.
Sorry to clarify.
No, I'm kidding.
But I find myself, if I honestly take an inventory, and I should do this more often, but more often than not, if I'm on social media, I usually get off feeling worse about my life or situation, because I'm looking at people, and especially now, like, social media is just like completely consumed with influencers and just people that are literally paid to promote products or promote lifestyles and they're being paid millions of dollars to live these type of lives, and they're like, hey, you need to buy this, and because they're getting paid to say that, and then it's
kind of like the modern day version of a commercial on TV. But I guess the fact that companies pay someone millions of dollars to promote their product says that it's effective and that it works.
It is. And like, I've fallen trap of, like, I see people have this stuff, or it could be like in a type of outfit or skincare product, or different. I'm a girl, so like those are the things I look at. But like, I'm like, oh man, like, I need that. And there's been times I have gotten those things, and I'm like, this isn't that big of a deal. Why did I fall? But it really makes you you can so easily fall into that comparison trap of like, oh, my life isn't as good as theirs because I don't have XYZ, or,
Well, hey, we're going to pause the conversation there. Hope that you'll come back tomorrow. We want to continue that conversation with Brianna and Rob and myself, where we talk about social media and its effect on us in the current generation that's using it. We have so much more we want to talk about. If you want to know more about what's happening here at Shepherd, you can find things on our website, social media, and of course on our app. And you can always get a hold of us, podcast@shepnaz.org. But until tomorrow, thanks for listening. Have a great day.
This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.